Before we get started, I just want to say this is one heck of a quest. We're not going to be going into massive detail about every area you have to go through and everything that is available there. This will mostly be key points with some interesting things thrown in, so just want to lay that out there. Your first encounter with Ranni will be here at the Church of Ella.
This way, Tarnished. May I have a word?
And she'll give you the spirit calling bell. If for whatever reason you miss this encounter, you can still get the spirit calling bell from the NPC in the round table hold. After this first encounter, it will be a long time until the quest continues. The next major point will be here, north of Liurnia, at the Caria Manor. Here at the end of the castle, you'll have to fight Royal Knight Loretta. I actually had a really hard time with this boss, but eventually with the help of spirits and a bit of practice, she went down. My basic strategy was to wait for an opening to launch a Bloody Slash, which is a quick and powerful move that helped me a lot in the early game. Eventually just ended up spamming Bloody Slash at the end, and that seemed to work out. Once you defeat Loretta, a gate will open to the north, and this leads you to the Three Sisters location. The important tower here is Ranni's Rise. I believe this is the only tower you will even have access to at this point anyway, so make your way down there. Once you get there, you're gonna wanna go to the top of the tower. Unfortunately, I didn't get footage of this encounter, but essentially, she'll ask you to join her. If you get to Ranni and she doesn't ask you to help her, apparently you need to talk to Rogier. After you defeat Godric, he'll be in the round table hold, and he'll suggest talking to Ranni, and then at that point, you can continue the quest. So after accepting Ranni's request, you'll have to speak to the 3 different NPCs here, e.g. Blaidd and Seluvis. You literally can't miss them as you are trapped in the tower until you speak to them. Blaidd essentially tells you to meet him in Mistwood. There is a well there, and Seluvis asks you to see him in person in one of the other 3 towers nearby, Seluvis's tower. Seluvis is a side quest within the side quest we'll get to in a little bit. And once you talk to all 3 of them, go back up to Ranni to finish this interaction. And so this is where the quest really begins. Down here in Limgrave, Mistwood, is where this supposed well will be. You can travel to the 3rd Church of Marika and just take the path south to get there. And you'll eventually come across this structure. Inside is a very, very deep well. Would typically have a platform, you stand on it, and find yourself inside Siofra River. Eventually, you'll make your way outside of this ruined place and find Blaidd waiting for you near a cliff, approximately in this location. There is an optional, side quest in here. There are these 8 little totems with a place to light fire. If you light all 8 of them up, you can fight some kind of ancestor spirit, and you'll get some ancestral follower ashes. Anyway, when you meet Blaidd down there, he will mention Seluvis. He will have a longer dialogue when you first talk to him, but that doesn't matter. Make your way to Seluvis's Rise. You have the option to ask about Nokron. He'll write you a letter of introduction to a sorcerer named Sellen. But yes, indeed, she is down here in Limgrave. Waypoint Ruin Cellar is the actual site of grace name. So once you talk to her, give her the letter of introduction. She'll tell you about some stuff. She does speak a bit in riddles.
General Radahn challenged the swirling constellations, and in a crushing victory arrested their cycles.
But essentially, once you go back to Blaidd, he'll know what she's talking about. So Blaidd goes to Caelid, more specifically in Redmane Castle. If you make your way south, there should be a teleporter that gets you in the castle nearby. Once you're in the castle, you talk to the quote-unquote festival organizer here, and now it's time to defeat Radahn. Radahn was, by far, the most trouble I had with any boss in any game, ever. That is, until I came back at level 90 and cheesed him to death. Still feel a little bit bad about that, but I guess I had died enough. Anyway, in the cutscene following Radahn's death, you can see a massive shooting star in the distance. This will actually crash into the earth and create the opening to Nokron, which is where you'll find the item Ranni had requested from you in the first place. Talk to Blaidd again before heading out to where this star hit the earth. A bit south of Mistwood is where it hit. It's a little hard to miss a massive floating rocks in the sky. It is in this area, a little bit south of Mistwood. There are potentially multiple ways to get down here. Just make sure you don't die to fall damage, and you should be good. Just continue making your way down the rocks, and eventually you'll come across an opening here. There'll be some ruin-looking areas you can explore if you wish. I didn't find anything particularly interesting down here. And once through that section, you will emerge out into Nokron, Eternal City. Here you gotta make your way down the houses. A little parkour is required here, but this section doesn't last too long. The area down here is pretty massive. I suggest take your time and look around, explore the area. There's a bell bearing on a body. One of my very first larval tears here on a corpse as well. And there's more where that came from. As you continue through Nokron, you'll eventually come to a yellow mist door. And I found this fight really funny, so you're gonna be fighting a clone of yourself. I don't know if it also takes your stats, but if it does, it makes sense that it was so glassy. Once you defeat it, you're rewarded with 2 more larval tears and a silver tear mask. Nokron is definitely the city of larval tears. Continuing on, you'll be in the same sort of underground area where you first met Blaidd, and there is another sort of mini quest where you light these torches, and once you light all 6 of them this time, you can fight an upgraded version of the Ancestor Spirit called the Regal Ancestor Spirit. This time, once you're successful, you'll get the Remembrance of the Regal Ancestor, which you can trade for other stuff at the NPC in the Round Table Hold. The first part of Nokron is relatively linear. Once you get past the Mimic fight, you can go up these stairs, past this bridge, and there'll be a hole in the bridge that leads to this area. But more importantly, once you leave this bridge, if you keep following it mostly to the edge here on the cliff, you'll eventually come up here, and there is an additional site of grace. Jumping down from the cliff, and now you're in Knight's Sacred Ground. You'll need to find your way to the bottom, and in this room with the massive skeleton on the throne is where you're gonna find your finger-severing sword. So now you have what you came down here for. Before giving the finger-slaying blade to Ranni, however, make sure to complete Seluvis' quest. Sadly, I did not. I didn't know there were going to be consequences at the time. But yeah, when you return this item to Ranni, she'll give you the Carian inverted statue. You don't need to worry about this now for the quest. I came back and did this way later, after the quest was done. But this is the item you can use in the Carian study hall to flip the whole place upside down. This allows you to get to the top of the tower with the elevator after you drop down in a very unnatural seemingly way. And once you emerge at the top or the bottom or whatever it is at this point, there'll be a mini boss here. Once you defeat him, you can continue on and eventually stumble upon Ranni's physical body, quite obviously devoid of life, and pick up a special item required for a secret boss and ending. Back on point, after giving Ranni the finger-slaying blade, Rinna's Rise will no longer be blocked off by mist. So you want to go ahead and visit there. Up to the top, there will be a teleporter. Use this to enter Ainsel River Main. Near the very first site of grace, you should spot a lootable item. This is the miniature Ranni doll. It took me until way later to figure out what to do with this, but for consistency's sake, what you should do now is rest at that specific site of grace, and there you will have the option to talk to the doll. It'll ask you for a favor, and that is to defeat the Baleful Shadow. Before fighting the Baleful Shadow, I'd recommend picking up the area map if you don't have it yet. It's southwest of the starting area and quite hard to miss, since it's under the area of that skeleton snake dude slinging rocks at you. It's around this location, and there will also be a merchant here. Our next goal is to get to Nokstella. From the starting area, you want to follow the river southwest. It's pretty straightforward. Feel free to explore this area, there are quite a lot of goodies to be had. Otherwise, continue following the river and you'll eventually get to an elevator. Take that elevator down and you'll reach another river. Go straight ahead and you'll reach a very red area eventually. The Baleful Shadow is located here. Once defeated, you'll get the discarded palace key. You can then finally open that chest in the library that in there is the Dark Moon Ring. Before you can use this, you need to go through a lot of the underground world. Again, there will be one more elevator, but this time you're being shipped to the wonderful paradise known as the Lake of Rot. Touching the soup quickly builds up the Scarlet Rot debuff, which makes poison look like a You can potentially avoid getting rotted if you have a large enough immunity and are quick enough to change platforms. There might be a spell to cure rot, I'm not sure. There are foods, but I couldn't make them and didn't want to bother looking into it, so I just tanked it and drank lots of flasks. As I also wasn't patient enough to wait for the Scarlet Rot to go back down to 0 before continuing on. There is what I assume is an optional boss here. I went ahead and killed it. But yeah, essentially your goal is to run around to the platforms, stepping on switches, raising the platforms, and eventually heading inside the main area. There is a tree dude here. Kill him for a seed if you wish. A little further along the one and only path, there is a Scarlet River. Down that river is a coffin you have the option to step into. Go ahead and do so once you've looted the area. You are then transported to a much nicer area, blue, not rotten. That is, of course, until you traverse the mist and meet Astel, natural born of the void. Even with my cheesy ass weapon, it still took me quite a few tries to kill this guy. He is pretty slow though. His moves didn't take too much practice to get the hang of and start avoiding. I basically always tried staying close to him so he'd more do melee stuff, although that didn't always turn out as well as it could have, but that's just what I was doing. You also can critical strike him here in the head, but I just decided to finish him off in case I screwed that up. Past him, there is a little seal here, which should be broken if you had already gotten the ring. As mentioned earlier, I had actually come here before talking to Mini Ranni, but after doing that, you can pass. And there will be an elevator here which will take you back up to Limgrave. I explored this area a lot. There are a few interesting things I just want to touch on before we finish the quest. You can use a stone sword key on these mimics here to get a Cerulean Amber Medallion +2. This raised my FP by 11. I'm gonna assume it is percentage based, so if you have a lot more FP, it'll probably do more for you than it did for me. In another area, there are 3 dragons really close by. This was definitely quite difficult. You can do one at a time and then die and it'll still be dead. After taking one down, there were 2 left and eventually they both woke up at the same time, which I was trying to avoid, but they actually ended up attacking each other and doing a pretty good amount of damage, basically killing it on its own. Early on in trying these 3 dragons, I did just try and wake up all 3 of them and hope they'd just all kill each other, but that didn't really work out because they kept spreading apart and shooting me from 3 angles and it was just impossible. But in this specific case, apparently it worked out with the 2. As far as I can tell, nothing special happens when you kill all 3 of them. They each do drop a dragon heart though. There is also an Everjail here with Electo. He's definitely quite tough as well, but upon defeating him, you get a legendary Ash, Black Knife Tish. However that's pronounced, I apologize. There is another dragon, Glintstone Dragon Adula. This one actually seemed much easier than the individual dragons, and while this is the place we actually have to go to complete the quest, I don't think you need to kill the dragon, although I'm not sure about that. You do get something a little bit more special from this one, including 3 dragon hearts and Adula's Moonblade. I did briefly try out this spell. I wasn't all that impressed, but it is decently quick. But it was on a single target. Maybe in AoE situations, it'd be a lot more impressive. There's also a massive amount of Starlight Shards in this area. All those purple things you see on the ground, all Starlight Shards. But yeah, in this area, there is a hole in the ground. It's pretty hard to miss if you know it's there. Make your way down there and through the path, and you'll eventually stumble upon Ranni, sitting next to some fingers that have been slain. After the cutscene is over, she will then appear once more and you can talk to her. She will leave you with a Dark Moon Greatsword. But yeah, that was actually it. That was the whole quest. Well, mainly, I guess. There is a little bit left. Kind of just really sad, as if the whole quest wasn't sad enough. But yeah, immediately after this, I went to Ranni's Rise, see what's going on there, see if there's anything left. And there wasn't really. I mean, she wasn't here. There was a new Site of Grace. But while I was there, you could hear Blaidd talking. And then Blaidd, who has been your closest companion throughout this entire quest, attacks you. I guess you could just leave him there forever, but I kind of put him out of his misery, and yeah, I killed him. Seems like he just went crazy. I mean, apparently he was already a crazy according to the blacksmith, but that's a whole different topic. Upon defeating him, you'll get basically his whole set minus the mask, which I think you got a lot earlier. I then went and checked on good old Seluvis, and yeah, he was dead as well. Apparently he's been dead since I gave her the finger-slaying blade. I hadn't checked on him since then, so I was very surprised when I came in here and just saw he was dead as well. And since I hadn't done his quest, I believe I'm missing out on like a amulet or a talisman or something. But you can buy a couple of the ashes that he was gonna sell you eventually anyway. Finally, of course, I wanted to check on the smith and was happy to see that he is in fact okay. Be careful though, because when you tell him about Blaidd's death, you leave and you come back, he will unfortunately also be dead. You can then take some things off of his anvil. That was the whole quest, its repercussions. It really didn't make me feel good. I didn't, I really loved the quest, but I kind of hated it at the same time, if you know what I mean. Obviously, this video is more of a walkthrough, not much of the story, because I assume when someone watches a walkthrough, they're gonna mostly follow along with it and stop watching the video until they're at the point they need to be, and then continue, and then, you know, follow along. But yeah, that'll do it. Even though it seems like a relatively simple video, is still a massive amount of work. So, hope you enjoyed. Dropping a like or subscribing to the channel is always appreciated, if so. But yeah, that'll do it. Until next time.